Thanks, Mary. Hello, everybody. Good morning for me. Good afternoon for most of you. I am Alejandro Calvache, Waterfront Senior Expert for Latin America TNC. And I'm going to talk a little bit more from the source, water source. What can we do in terms of collective action to make sure we have enough water to drain into our pipes, into our treatment plants, into our agriculture, into our houses? So next one, please. Let me start by this very basic concept, but I find this fundamental for the discussions of how can we protect water source, right? And for me, this is the starting point, which is the integrity concept, also applicable to the watersheds, right? Everything we do, everything we promote as a human activity has consequences on our water flows. And for this, the concept of freshwater ecosystem integrity basically states how can we deal with development, with human activity, but at the same time, protect our source to make sure we have enough water for everyone. This is embedded actually in the water security concept. And it basically means that if we want water for everyone, we need to start to make sure our ecosystems are able to provide water enough to their self-recovery, right? Everything we do in mining, agriculture, dams, overfishing has a direct consequences on water flows, not even in terms of quantity, but especially in terms of quality, which is a very important threat right now in all over the world. So this is, for me, a very critical start point to try to understand this is not just one sole problem. This is actually a collective initiative that need to rely on everyone's, from homes, going through citizens, going through companies, going to governments as well. Next one, please. So here is the classic comparison between what we do need. I think there is another next to complete the picture here into the next slide. Well, we can go with this. No, that one back. Yeah. So of course we need treatment plants, we need infrastructure, right? We need what we call the gray approach: channels, treatment plants, dams, roads. But what we have not yet understood is that the functional relationship between the infrastructure and the green infrastructure. How can we make sure that water is still draining? Because we have a complementary activities in forest protection, reforestation, best agriculture management practice, repair and restoration, and wetlands management that actually optimize this gray infrastructure. The functional relationship between the gray and the green is critical to be understood. It's not enough to have good dams, good treatment plants. It is also important to have all the nature in place and in good shape to make sure their function is able to provide water over the long term. By water, I mean enough flows to everybody, enough quality to be satisfied by human consumption. Next one, please. So this is our proposal, which is a very common collective action platforms. We call them water funds. There is a lot of information in this slide, but I would like to summarize this in 3 key topics that I find especially critical for the watershed management. Number 1 is the idea of long-term. Our ecosystems need to be in good health, and for that, we need to spend time and money. So our water funds are aimed to be operational for a very long term. We need to be credible, and we need to create influence, and for that, our water funds need to operate for at least 20 or 30 years to make sure results are obtained in terms of quality and quantity. Number 2 is the collective action concept, which is these platforms are aimed to be formed by not only public sector, but also corporate sector, but especially civil society. Local communities living in there, local organizations, local governments, local authorities are part of water funds most of the time because they are mainly the primary beneficiaries of investment. They are able to operate conservation projects and they have decision-making part on the governance model of water funds. So this is important for us. And number three is science. We need to know very well what's happening in the watershed. We need to understand what are the key areas that we need to intervene to make a difference. And we have science robust enough to understand how is the best approach in conservation or any activities we have to deploy in watersheds to obtain the highest results. So these three elements, more these others you can see there, are what we call water funds. And we have amazing results in this arena. We have been working for the last 20 years promoting these collective action platforms. And what is interesting here is that it's not just one model. It's actually very flexible. We can go to the next slide, please. To make sure we have like local ingredients to make the recipe successful. So we have those one in which there is a multi-stakeholder model, right? It's a couple of these examples where there is a board that is providing guidance to the water fund for the interventions, priorities, and the funding process. But it's multi-stakeholder, right? It's both public and private, and most of the time, as I said, local organizations involved. But we have also government operated. This is quite particular in South American countries in which there are like a lot of local environmental authorities promoted by local governments that have the mandate to take care of water resource management. So these water funds are applicable in this arena as well, in the sense of government is not the only player. We need the support of other players like corporate sectors, but also like development financial institutions, for example, international cooperation, for example, and private sector. So even if the government is leading by their organizations as environmental authorities, they have the support for the implementation of key activities in the watershed by others. And the last one, for example, in Brazil, where there is a very common institution called Comités de Bacias, basically watershed committees. There are the authorities for watershed protection, in which we don't need a water fund. There is already a collective action platform. We don't need to compete. We don't need to overlap. This is where TNC get involved by providing, for example, science or financial sustainability or financial projections to complete that watershed committee task, right? So this is just to let you know that there is a whole bunch of possibilities for the water fund to operate. But what we care the most and we are interested the most is these three dimensions of multi-stakeholder, long-term, and science. Next one, please. So this is what we got so far after these 20 years work in Latin America, right? Don't forget, our main goal is to protect watersheds. We are pretty sure that we need water over the long term, but we need especially water in terms of what's happening right now in the climate change arena. And for that, this is just a few results in terms of local partners, for example, more than 300. This is coming from government institutions to local organizations that are actually involved somehow and somewhere in water funds. A lot of money raised. I think this is a good job so far, but we need to make the difference. How can we go higher? How can we, for example, get influence in policymakers to make sure we have enough money to protect watersheds by adjusting just a minimal rate of the water tariff we pay? That's just one example we can show. And there is a bunch more others. and a lot of areas that are actually effectively conserved so far. This is kind of critical for us as TNC, as a conservation organization. And of course, families that are actually getting direct benefits, such as incentives for implement best agricultural management practices, or conservation easements, or a specific support for improved watershed management in their lands. Next one. And I think that was it. I think the time was okay, Mary. Thanks for that. Happy to have in the Q&A session.